Okay, we're going to go ahead and call Senate revenue to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Buck, Senator Donate, Senator Gansert, Senator Spearman, Chair Neal.
Here, please mark Senator Gansert present when she arrives. She may not, so she might also be excused. She's in another committee. And mark Senator Dunyate present when he arrives. All
Okay.
right, so we have two bills on the agenda. We're going to start with AB 232, which revises provisions related to tobacco products. So we'll call Assemblyman Hibbets up, and if Assemblywoman Considine, if you're watching, please make your way down here.
Good morning, Madam Chair and the extensive Committee on Revenue. For the record, my name is Brian Hibbets, Assembly District 13, and I'm here to present Assembly Bill 232. As written, the bill revises the taxation of premium cigars as defined under this bill and changes their taxation in OTP or other tobacco products. Currently, the law states that anything defined as other tobacco products is taxed at 30% of wholesale value upon receipt by the retailer. The bill as written would change that slightly to define premium cigars and cap that tax at 50 cents per cigar with a floor of 30 cents per cigar. Premium cigar is defined as a cigar that is rolled by hand, has a wrapper made of whole tobacco leaves, and does not have a filter or mouthpiece. Excuse me. The reason for the requested change in law is economic. Our current statutes place our small business owners at a disadvantage. The surrounding states such as Arizona, their premium cigars are capped at 22 cents. Texas is capped at 1 cent. Florida has no tobacco tax. And internet retailers are not paying sales or tobacco tax to the state of Nevada. Without going into a very long presentation, that is putting our retailers at a disadvantage, and they're seeing a shift to online marketplaces. Our retailers have testified in the assembly. They would have been here today, but we don't have a video conference to Las Vegas. And they have testified that they are seeing a lot of people that will come into their lounge, buy a cigar from their humidor, and while they're sitting in the lounge sampling it, they will get on their phone, use the internet, and order a box of those cigars from another retailer without having to pay the OTP, and they'll save approximately 30%. If you look at the exhibits, you can see an example of that listed. We believe that this change will help the economy and bring in more business for our brick and mortar retailers, thus allowing them to survive. I believe my co-presenter, Assemblyman Nguyen, would like to offer a few words himself.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Yui Nguyen. I am representing Assembly District 8. I am here to add on to Assemblyman Hibbett's point about the brick and mortar piece. So there are growing consumption or cigar lounge in my district, and this bill was brought into my attention because of the lack of support that they filled. This particular growth is being stunted because there's not incentive for the businesses to be able to grow. And So this was brought on to my attention as a constituent bill, and the constituent in my district are opening up brick and mortar location. Food is closed to members of the Senate Revenue Committee, and I said that at the same time in the Assembly side. I am not a cigar user. I have never tried one. Maybe this will change, but I am here in terms of ensuring that my constituent voice is part of this conversation. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. Any additional?
Yes, ma'am, there is a, we've consulted with taxation and addressed any concerns that they have, and they are here for questions also if questions come up for them. But there is a conceptual amendment because when we presented this in the Assembly side, we were requested to add the floor to it of 30 cents, which was not part of the original bill. We readily agreed because we didn't see any problems with it, and unforeseen consequences, as we all know, pop up. And what that did was it turned this into a 2/3 bill. That was never the intention. And legal actually has another version that still caps at 50 cents, but removes the floor of 30 cents. And one thing I did forget to mention is that this bill does have a sunset of June 30th of 2027, and that is just so that we can show that historically, other states that have done this, I believe, and I'm not exactly positive, I believe it's 33 states have done something similar to this, if not exactly this, and they have shown that although they're limiting their OTP tax, their revenue actually goes up, and that is our anticipation with this, so that's why we put the sunset in to show that, so we have data to show that it actually does work, and if it doesn't work, then we can just go back to the way it was. But we don't anticipate that being needed. We'll come back in 2 sessions and remove the sunset if everything works out the way we anticipate it to.
So Assemblyman Hibbett, so is this a new conceptual amendment, or are you referencing the conceptual amendment that moved on the floor of the Assembly before it got over here, or should we have another document, because I don't have it?
This is a new conceptual amendment, and unfortunately, due to the short time frame, I didn't have time to get it submitted, but I do have a copy, and I will be more than happy.
Can you please submit it to the secretary? Because we need copies of that so I can read it and understand exactly what you're doing.
Of course.
So we'll take a brief recess because I really need to understand exactly what's happening in terms of the policy. Okay, everybody had a chance to see this amendment, read this amendment? Okay, so we will come out of recess. I will open this up for questions. Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if, how much is the most a premium cigar would cost?
Brian Hibbets for the record. Are you referring to wholesale or retail, Senator?
Either way.
Well, the most would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $15, I would imagine. I'm not an expert on wholesale cigars as far as pricing, but we do have, we should have people on the call-in line that can offer information on that once we get to that point.
Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think somebody, either Assemblyman Hibbets or Assemblyman Nguyen, mentioned there's a problem with people testing, trying cigars in a cigar lounge, and instead of purchasing it in that retail store, brick and mortar, they go online. So if they go online and it's $15, let's just use that figure, it's $15, but online it's like, I don't know, $12 or something like that. Did you factor that in terms of what the tax rate would be? Does that make sense to you? Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out what's the lost revenue. And we know it's a lost revenue for the retailer. What's the lost revenue from a tax perspective?
Brian Hibbets for the record. Thank you very much for the question, Senator. The state loses all tax revenue because the internet retailers are not paying OTP or sales tax. They're not collecting those. Therefore, they're not paying those to the state. If you look under the exhibits, you will see a submission by Brad Mark that actually has copies of receipts that he presented in the Assembly Committee that shows buying one cigar in a local retail lounge and then buying the exact same cigar from an internet retailer where no taxes were collected. Brian Hibbets for the record, and that equates to approximately 30%, depending. It varies a little bit.
Follow up?
Go ahead, Senator Spearman. And Assemblyman Hibbets, can you do your outside voice?
My apologies. Sitting on the other side of the dais, I noticed that some people tend to be a little too loud, so I'm trying not to blow out the speakers.
Thank you. I might have missed it in the presentation, but why only premium?
Brian Hibbets for the record. Thank you, Senator. The non-premium cigars or cigars that are not defined as premium by this bill don't rise to the level where they would be capped. They by design they don't cost as much, so they wouldn't rise. It's $1.67 where the cap kicks in. Anything at $1.67 or below for a wholesale price would be less than 50 cents under the current taxation system. So, excuse me, the average cigar that is not covered by a premium cigar, and I can't think of one that is, would not cost $1.67 wholesale. Most of those cost $1 or under.
Senator Gansert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so, you know, I'm not well versed on what the taxes are, how that works for other tobacco products when they're online, and maybe it's for tobacco products too. So it sounds like the taxes are paid at the wholesale level. So if you're purchasing from out of state, there's no cigarette stamp, is that the issue, is that there's no way to tax something because it's not a sales tax, it's an excise tax that comes into the state? So it's always going to be inequitable?
Brian Hibbets for the record. Senator, the OTP or other tobacco products tax is 30% of wholesale value upon receipt by the retailer or the first transaction in the state of Nevada. And taxation can correct me if I'm wrong on some of this, but I think I've got a fairly decent handle of it. So, for instance, if a retailer purchases a cigar that is a $10 wholesale value, for example, they would pay the state $3 of tax prior to ever putting that cigar on their shelf or making a sale. They would then, of course, mark up that price in retail, which would then be passed on to the consumer. The problem with the internet is, as long as they're not based in Nevada, they're not going to be paying the other tobacco product tax or a sales tax.
Okay, thank you. And then the amendment, this conceptual amendment, because it fixes the price at 50 cents per unit, does that take the 2/3 off?
Brian Hibbets for the record. Yes, I have reached out to Brian Fernley in legal, who assured me that the floor is the reason for the 2/3, and that I did ask him if that was a legal opinion, and he said it was the legal opinion of LCB.
Thank you. And then I think in the mock-up, I saw an extension of the sunset date by 2 years. And for what reason? Why did you want to do that?
Brian Hibbets for the record. I apologize. That was the original mock-up from prior to negotiations on the assembly side, so it would still be, I would still ask that it be, the sunset still be in 2027, just so that we're not messing with those numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any additional questions? So I have a couple. I'm going to start off with this first. So as part of a negotiation to get this out of assembly revenue, does the chair and the vice chair know that you reversed what they agreed upon as policy?
Brian Hibbets for the record. I have spoken, and so is Mr. Sullivan, who's behind me, who's been working on this with us, has spoken to Chair Bacchus, and she is well aware, as well as the majority of the other members. I believe we've gotten to everybody, but I don't want to say that for sure.
Okay, second question is, I understand you had the floor, and then you had the 50 cents now where you're removing the 30% that was on the wholesale. But I guess and I'm sure this was asked and answered on the other side about why we're treating one particular subset of OTP differently. And I understand the economic argument, and I watched the hearing on the other side, but I guess I'm not convinced that this is necessarily appropriate policy. So can you continue to further persuade me on why 50 cents when it could be $14, it could be $4, it could be $8, and now the revenue generated for the state would only be 50 cents versus 30% wholesale?
Brian Hibbets for the record. Thank you for the question. Taxation doesn't break out how much tax that we get from premium cigars. That's just not the way the system is designed. Fiscal year, and I want to say 21, there was approximately $35 million collected by the state in other tobacco product tax. If you look at other states that have a similar system, premium cigars make up approximately 2% of that. So we're looking at somewhere between $1 to $2 million in revenue for the state, which would be reduced. However, what we've seen in other states is that the sales tax makes up for it, because people are they're able to buy a better product, or they would be able to buy more of a product. And you would also be bringing people in that, instead of purchasing online, you would actually make up those portions of the tax, and the state would see those revenues, which they are currently seeing zero of. Does that answer your question, Senator?
Okay. It does a little bit. Oh, Senator Ganser. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, looking at the legislation again, your original bill was you kept the rate, but then you capped the level to the 50%, and that didn't have a 2/3, but you may have a 2/3 because now you're changing the tax, so you might have to look at that and get some input from legal on that. I was talking to Mr. Yakamoto about, whether you're triggering the 2/3 or not. And then I think the assumption that's being made is they're going to sell more cigars because the net price is going to be much closer to the price when you buy on the internet. And then, so have you had examples from other states? Are there any other states that have capped or that have a tax scheme to where there's not a significant differential between the retail price and an online price?
Brian Hibbets for the record. If I understand your question correctly, I can use Michigan as an example, who did a very similar cap is what we're proposing. They had originally put the cap in with a sunset. They extended the sunset to get the data, and then they removed the cap because they saw that their revenue was actually going up. And that's one example. And if I can shuffle paperwork so I can find another one, and I can't remember which particular state it was that showed doubling of their revenue within a few years. That's not it. I apologize, I can't find the particular paper that had it. I believe it was,
So, Mr. Nakamoto, would you like to chime in? And Assemblyman Hibbets and Assemblyman Nguyen, I hope, so, okay, how am I going to say this? It's the deadline week. The chair does not agree with this amendment, okay? I'm putting it out there. I hope you understand that if you change something on this side, the chair has to concur. The chair is probably not going to concur. I do believe that this increase, you removing the floor and then having just a straight 50% is probably going to be considered a tax increase, because you have to consider what it looks like depending on what that 50 cents is applying to. So there's not going to be an even application of what 50 cents is. And it could be seen as a tax increase. So we're trying to reach out to Mr. Fernley. I understand that you care about this policy, but when you change something that the chair on the other side has decided is the only way that she will accept the policy, and then you come over here and change it, I am going to talk to that chair, right? And if the chair is in disagreement with the amendment that you're presenting, I'm going to lean to her. And she was not aware that this change was happening. So I'm putting you on notice, because now you're hearing, and this amendment is probably not going to be accepted. So would you like to recalculate and rethink what would you really like to have? Because it's probably needs to be what the other side accepted. I just need to cut to the chase, because we don't have a lot of time, and so I don't want to waste your time with a bill that could ultimately die. Because if it's a non-concurrence, okay, all right, Mr. Nakamoto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Michael Nakamoto, Chief Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division, and I will stress the Fiscal Analysis Division portion of this, as I am not an attorney, and I am in the process of reaching out to Mr. Fernley to get some more information. But as I was in the original hearing for this bill when it was in Assembly Revenue, the way the bill was originally drafted was that the premium cigars would be calculated at a 30% price up to 50 cents, so that there was a cap, but there was no floor. The bill as amended put a floor of 30 cents on it, which was, as Assemblyman Hibbets indicated, the reason why the 2/3 was put on the bill. The amendment that has been brought forward to you that is drafted slightly differently than the bill was originally drafted. That, as it's stated now, it's no longer 30% up to 50 cents per cigar. It is 50 cents per cigar. Based on the draft that is here that says, if the other tobacco products are premium cigars, a tax of 50 cents for each premium cigar, which serves as the way that I am looking at it as fiscal staff, both as a floor and a cap simultaneously. So because this amendment that has been presented, I would believe that there is the potential that there could be a taxpayer who is maybe paying additional tax under this. It's just essentially would be taking that 30-cent floor and increasing it to 50 cents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Senator Spearman.
And I apologize if this is redundant, I missed some of it. So the rationale for 50 cents is fill in the blank.
I'm sorry, Senator, I couldn't hear your question. I apologize.
So the rationale for 50 cents, that price, what's the rationale? We came to 50 cents because fill in the blank.
Mike Sullivan, the Ferraro Group, representing Malecon Tobacco. The reason we came up with 50 cents is it seemed like we looked around the country, and that was the price point that seemed to make sense. The state didn't lose as much money, but that was the rate where our retailers could now compete with other states, be able to sell the cigars, compete with the internet. So that was why we came up with the 50 cents. And I just wanted to add, all we were looking to do with that amendment, I think it was drafted wrong. All we wanted to do is go back to the original bill language. That's it. I think what we gave you was not drafted correctly. All we want to do is go back before that amendment was put on and just say 30% wholesale up to 50 cents. So capped at 50 cents. Anything under would be 30% wholesale. When you reach that level, then 50 cents would be the cap on what you charge. That was the original bill. All we want to do is go back to the original bill with the sunset. That was all we were asking. I think we probably gave you the wrong amendment, because that's all. We want to go back to the original bill language before it was added. That's what I talked to Chairman Bacchus about, is just going back, because what happened when we created this amendment is we created 3 levels of taxation. Now we have a 30% wholesale, then up to like $1, then from $1 to $1.67 is this 30-cent floor, and then after that is the 50 cent. So we accidentally, with this floor, created a 3rd level of taxation of cigars that was never we just wanted to have a simple 50 cent, over 50 cents, then it's capped. So I apologize if that was confusing. All we wanted to do is go back to the original bill language. I think people are thinking we tried to do something else. That's all our amendment wanted to do. Apologize.
So, no, I understood it exactly that way, except for you're going to have further conversation. The message that I'm understanding is that the original bill, as presented in Assembly Revenue, was amended. It was amended so that you could get the votes to get it out of the committee. The version in which was adopted and voted on the Assembly floor, which has the floor of 30 cents with a max of 50 cents, is what they want, and they don't want it changed. So I don't know how else, because what I'm helping you to understand, and I know this is not your first session, this is your first session, that when it comes out, I adopt this, I'm amending a bill that came out of her committee, and she does not have to accept the Senate amendment. You will then have to go through a concur or not concur, right? And then that, if she says, well, I'm not accepting it, you're still back at the bill version that she passed out of her committee. Or she could do several other things, right? Which could ultimately kill your bill. And so what I'm telling you on Thursday before Monday of a deadline is that you need to make a decision about what it is that you would like to walk out of this particular session with. And if you want your policy, then you might have to walk out of here with what the Assembly revenue told you was the only version that you can get, because I'm not throwing this into a conference committee for shenanigans. I'm not doing any of those things. So while your supporters come up in support of 232, I want you to think deeply about the choices you would like to make on this policy.
Senator, I can answer that question right now if you'd like.
Okay.
I would happily withdraw the conceptual amendment.
That would be very wise. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sullivan, do you have any? Okay, so then we will go ahead and open up for support on AB 232. Is there anyone here in support of AB 232?
My name is Aisha Goins, AESHAGOINS, and I'm representing Tap and Ash Social Club. And we are in fully support of this bill. I do want to point out that my clients are intentionally interested in the fact that they have a growing business. It's growing rapidly. And one of the places where they're losing revenue is we are, and I'm saying we because I'm one of the persons, we are purchasing product online instead of from the actual business, because a cigar at retail is $22, and when we go to purchase that on wholesale, that doesn't apply tax. A case of those ends up being cheaper than purchasing it from the retailer. So the intent of this bill was to ensure that those consumers that were using the social club, in this case, were able to buy bulk from that retailer instead of purchasing online. And so I am not sure what the amendment situation is, but I do want to say that that is the intent, and that is what my clients are hoping will be the outcome. And I urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone else in support in Carson City? So I will move to the phone lines because we don't have access to Vegas. So BPS, is there anyone on the phone line in support of AB 232?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in support of AB 232, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. I'm not sure if I have been unmuted, and are you prepared for me?
Yes, are you calling in support?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Thank you. My name is Brad Mark, E-R-A-D, last name M-A-R-K. I'm testifying today in support of AB 232. I am a small businessman opening a cigar lounge in Las Vegas. I'm a 33-year resident of Las Vegas, Nevada, and this will be my 7th business. I have enjoyed my career of creating jobs in this great state of ours. This venture, Smoke Cigar Lounge, will open in October this year in Mr. Wynn's district, and I really appreciate his support. And Mr. Hibbets have been great at getting this championed over. Very simply, and I'd like to address one of the comments from one of the other senators that I was listening to. Yes, we're giving up a 30% revenue in some cases, but the reality of what we've seen across the nation in states like Wisconsin with a 78% increase and doubling the revenues, New Jersey, Michigan, state after state after state has adopted this same type of policy. And everywhere we've done it, although they're giving up 30% of revenue on one case, you're picking up 100% of those that were not getting because of the online sales. I submitted those receipts from the previous Assembly Committee hearing showing how you can save $6 on a $20 cigar, and we simply can't ask our customers to support us locally. I'm trying to create 20 jobs here and an average starting salary of over $40,000 in compensation, and we just need to be able to compete. I'll be very quick. The one analogy I can give you is consider buying a car. If you could buy that car at a dealership for $15,000 and you can buy the same car online for $10,000, you would be a fool not to purchase it online. That being said, if the tax situation were similar and you could buy the car locally or online, most of us would agree that we would buy that at the dealership from a person, from someone that we can see, where we can test drive the car, where we can see the car, touch the car. We have a person's hand to shake, and we have a person to go back to for future purchases or if we have a problem. Our cigar smokers are facing this exact situation every day in Nevada because they simply can't buy locally at the same fair price. We're competing with the other states that simply aren't paying Nevada. Let's get 100% of the revenue from all the customers that will purchase from our employees. I'm already working with the Employee NV website. I'll be hiring people directly through their resources to get people off of unemployment. We just want to make this a fair purchasing decision for all of our consumers. I appreciate your time and thank you so much.
Thank you for that. BPS, is there anyone else?
If you're just joining us and would like to testify in support of SB 232, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Michelle Renless, and my husband Melvin and I are in support of passing AB 232. We are owners of a small cigar lounge in Las Vegas called Captioning, and we're a newly opened minority-owned business. And the reason that this is so important to us is obviously it would make a great fiscal difference to our business. Currently, lounges like ours have two options for purchasing products. The first is ordering direct from the manufacturer or an out-of-state distributor, where we're required to pay a monthly upfront tax of the 30% that's already in place for those purchases. With, I add, no option to utilize tax incentive provided by these distributors or manufacturers that are willing to pay those fees on our behalf. As I'm sure you can imagine, paying a 30% tax on an item and you haven't had the opportunity to sell creates a significant financial burden to our bottom line. This is why the passage of this bill is so important to us. As an example, when we originally stocked our humidor, our inventory cost somewhere in the range of $50,000 to $75,000, which is a significant investment on its own. However, when you look at the current tax code, that left us paying almost $23,000 in taxes for something that is still ultimately sitting on, for the most part, still on our shelves, and we haven't had a chance to recoup. So, you know, over the last year, we're close to $70,000 in what we've paid. And obviously, to a small business, that's a significant amount of money that could be going toward improving our business, improving our customers' experience, and maintaining a strong workforce. So all of that is something that's very important to us. It's also fair to say that most lounges depend solely on cigar sales, where the average item is somewhere around $10 to $20. This is unlike online retailers that are not required to pay taxes or on their brick and mortar locations that sell multiple products, such as a convenience stores or large retailers who sell an extensive line of unrelated products to support that type of an expense. And we basically just continue to carry this tax burden based on what we sell. The change proposed in AB 232 from 30% to 50 cents tax for each premium cigar would not only put our small minority-owned business on equal playing field with those types of retailers, it would immediately improve our bottom line by freeing up working capital to allow us a better financial footing to grow and improve our business. I would also add that the precedence has already been set for this type of taxation in Arizona, which only charges 22 cents tax for each premium cigar, a state that we actually have to compete with for business due to their lower tax rate. We recently, just as an example, we recently had a customer come into our lounge with a cigar that would normally sell for $10 with a price tag of $3.05 from an online retailer in Arizona. We appreciate you taking the time to consider the passage of AB 232, and I hope this helped in expressing its importance to our business as well as to everyone in our industry carrying this burden.
Okay, thank you, caller.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. BPS, is there anyone else?
There are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Okay, is there anyone here in opposition to AB 232?
Good afternoon, Chair Neal and committee members. For the record, my name is Caitlin Gatchalian, Caitlin Gatchalian, and I'm the Government Relations Director for the American Heart Association. On behalf of the American Heart Association, I would like to express our opposition to AB 232. An estimated 380,000 U.S. students were current cigar users in 2021, making cigars the second most popular tobacco product amongst youth. Regular cigar smoking increases the risks of cancer of the lung, oral cavity, larynx, and esophagus. Cigar smokers have a 27% higher risk of heart disease and a 45% higher risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease as compared to people who were not cigar smokers. Historically, cigar smoking in the United States has been a behavior of older men, but the industry's increased marketing of these products to targeted groups increased the prevalence of use among adolescents. The tobacco industry continues to use tactics to appeal to youth and has been since the early 1900s. Tobacco companies know that youth use of tobacco is price sensitive, and raising tobacco prices reduces use of smoking. This bill would set a precedent for other tobacco products taxes to be lowered. Please oppose AB 232 and protect the health of our community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for that. All right. Is there anyone else? BPS, is there anyone on the line in opposition of 232?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Okay, is there anyone in neutral to AB 232 in Carson? Seeing no one, is there anyone on the line, BPS, in neutral for AB 232?
There are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Okay, Assemblyman Hibbets and Assemblyman Nguyen, would you guys like to do closing comments?
Brian Hibbets for the record. Thank you very much, Chair. First, I'd like to thank you and the committee for the expeditious hearing today. I wasn't exactly expecting it to be this quick. And I would also like to apologize for the mix-up with the proposed amendment. That was, after I looked at it closer, that was not the one that I intended. I was also not attempting to backdoor Chairman Bacchus from the Assembly. Believe me, not my intention. And I would also, one thing I would like to address with the testimony from the American Heart Association, thanks to AB 380 from last session, now that retailers are required to scan IDs of anyone purchasing a tobacco product, the chances of someone walking into a premium cigar lounge to purchase a cigar that is underage is almost nil. And children are not going in to purchase a $35 Padron cigar. It just doesn't happen. And the cigars that they are talking about are not covered by this bill. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope to have your support.
Okay, thank you. We will close the hearing on AB 232 and open up for AB 345 on the commerce tax. So, Assemblywoman Considine, I know you have a PowerPoint. However, we have to get to floor, so if you could avoid that in all parts, I would appreciate it.
No worries.
Thank you.
Do you have hard copies of it?
We do.
That's perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Venetia Considine. I represent Assembly District 18. I'm honored to be here today. Thank you so much for the hearing. And I'm here to present on AB 345. I don't have a long presentation. Essentially, this is a bill about the commerce tax. There is an exemption in the commerce tax for real estate investment trusts. It's been in there since the commerce tax was created. A few years ago, I found a very odd-sounding interest in real estate investment trust and tried to track down why this exemption was put into the commerce tax. I've been unable to find any documented information as to why. So looking at why this is in here, learning more about real estate investment trusts, I have not yet seen a reason for this to be in here, and I'll talk about that in a second. So first, I'm going to assume that you're not fully fluent in real estate investment trust, which is the bulk of what my PowerPoint is about. A real estate investment trust, or what's more likely called a REIT, is a corporation, a trust, or an association that meets requirements of Section 856 of the Internal Revenue Code. REITs provide an investment vehicle that allows individuals to pool their resources, purchase rental real estate, and avoid paying taxes on the returns that they receive. And when I say avoid paying taxes, the Federal Revenue Code, as long as the real estate investment trust, the revenue that they generate, if 90 to 95% of that goes to shareholders, they don't pay any taxes. As that goes down, your shareholders pay income tax. But Nevada has no income tax. REITs can generally be thought of as kind of like a business enterprise that is analogous to a mutual fund for real estate investments. They began in 1960, but didn't have much success for their first 30 years. That changed in 1986 with the Real Estate Investment Trust Modernization Act, which resulted in explosive growth of REITs in the industry in the 1990s. Most REITs' income comes from rents from rental property. An equity REIT specializes in property ownership. When we're talking about property ownership REITs, there's three types, but the main ones are a triple net REIT and a non-triple net REIT. A triple net REIT is a lease agreement where the real estate investment trust in the lease for the tenant, the tenant is responsible for paying rent, for paying for all maintenance, for paying for insurance, and for paying the property taxes. So all of that is paid for by the tenant. That's part of it. There is also the non-triple net REIT. That is where an entity is not paying any of that. That's basically your lodging REITs, and they only pay rent. That's about 3% of REITs, and that's pretty much like your Marriotts, your Hilton, and your Hyatts. So just to kind of give you a quick overall on what REITs are. In Nevada, since this explosive growth, there are currently at least, and these numbers are from about a month and a half ago, over 7,900 properties that are owned by real estate investment trusts across the state. The property value in total for that is about $78 billion. Within the chart, or within the PowerPoint, the documents that you have, I've listed in a chart so that you could see how REITs vary. So they are from Iron Mountain, which is a place that just, a storage place, realty places. There are big REITs in this town that we're aware of that own most of the property on this strip, but there are also cell tower REITs. They're sort of all over the place. So this is not a bill aiming at any one entity. What this bill is aiming at is, why are they exempt? And is anyone even paying it, or does anyone even fall under it? So this is why I actually brought this bill. For an example about this for rental property, so for example, rental income over $4 million from tenants is likely to be considered gross revenue for the purpose of the commerce tax, and that's the commerce tax. Business entities who are engaged in real estate and rental and leasing under NIACS Category 53 are then liable to pay a tax rate of 0.25% of all Nevada gross revenue earned in excess of $4 million in a taxable year. So, for example, if a rental company generates $5 million in Nevada gross revenue from the rental of its property in a taxable year, then 0.25% rate would apply to only $1 million in gross revenue. And the business entity's commerce tax liability on that $1 million would be $2,500. The taxable year for the purpose of this tax is identical to the state's fiscal year, and the tax is due to the Department of Taxation no more than 45 days at the end. Just wanted to have that all written down to give you an idea of how that process works. The next is the actual exemption, NRS 363C020-2I. So the way, my understanding of reading this and in talking to folks is that when the commerce tax was created, this was listed as an exemption to what is considered a business entity. And then there are exemptions to the exemption. And the reason why I bring this up is because bringing this bill forward, doing the research, I have had no real estate investment trusts reach out to me on this bill. On the hearing on the Assembly side, there was no opposition. In the Ways and Means, there's been no support, no opposition. I am aware of 2 REITs have contacted me simply to tell me that this doesn't matter because they pay it under LLC, under one of the exemptions. So this is a dual question. If this doesn't assist in providing revenue or is revenue neutral, there's no reason for this to be in the law. The second reason is if we have a growing number of REITs, if we have over 7,900 REITs in the state, and that property, rental property money that potentially could be going towards revenue is going out of state, we are in a negative net revenue for these parcels. And they are growing, and I think the time to have conversations about what these are and how Nevada wants to deal with them and learn more about them is a conversation that I was hoping to start, but haven't really had very many REITs reach out to talk to me about this. So I know I covered sort of a lot in a couple of different areas, but that is the purpose of the bill, and also not sure why it's in the commerce tax if it's not doing anything anyway. And finally, wanted to start off a conversation about real estate investment trusts in Nevada and the property that they own. And thank you for your time, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you for that. Matt, any questions? Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm looking here, the total property value of the REITs is $78 billion per year, or just a snapshot in time?
Thank you for the question, Senator Spearman, through Chair Neal, Venetia Considine, for the record. That is the amount, the worth of the property in total right now, not every year. That's just the property that's being held by REITs in Nevada is worth $79 billion.
And so if the LLC X's them out of the property tax, I mean, I'm trying to see what the legal format is for getting this bill. You understand what I'm saying? I think you said that some people said, well, it's okay that we don't capture them in the tax because they pay it through the LLC. Okay, explain that to me.
Thank you for the question, Senator Spearman, through the chair, Venetia Considine, for the record. I have been contacted by a couple of the larger real estate investment trusts from somebody from there. And when I asked them questions about the bill, they did not come to me saying that they oppose or support it. What they said is, because of the way that we have created an LLC, it is actually one of the exemptions to the exemption in the law. So because of that, they're saying that they're paying it, so this has no effect on them whatsoever. So if this has no effect on them whatsoever, again, I'm not sure why it's here. I didn't get into exactly what they were saying because it was somebody on behalf of them. I've not been able to have a bigger conversation with someone to explain to me how they are both a real estate investment trust, but are not subject to the exemption because they're saying that they're paying it another way. I don't know if taxation could answer that question, but it's not been something I've been able to find out, which again is why I'm bringing this, because it's an area that I'd like to learn more about.
So these are corporate property owners, such as apartments, homes, that sort of thing. So these are part of the people that the rents were escalating. You don't answer that.
Senator Spearman, through the chair, one of the real estate investment mechanisms that I've seen is actually building master planned, and that not necessarily Nevada, but master planned communities where every house in that community is a rental.
Okay, so I guess I only have like two questions, and the first one is, so for when you have the number of properties that are listed as basically 7,937, they're the properties that fit the definition of they have at least 95% of their gross income from certain sources, as described in the USC, right, 856, and at least 75% of its gross income from certain sources, as described in 856 under the USC. Is that what that number represents?
Thank you for the question, Chair Neal. Venetia Constein for the record. So trying to research information, the little red line on the bottom, which is Nevada, it's REITs Across America. It's a website that lists all of the REITs. It's where I got this information. What is considered a real estate investment trust in Nevada is where this number comes from. It's my understanding that if you are a real estate investment trust, as long as you pay, you take 95% of whatever that revenue is and you give it out to shareholders, then there is no federal income tax, or there is no federal tax on it.
So then my second question is, so they were excluded under the commerce tax because they were considered a non-business entity. So in terms of federal law, how are they considered? Are they considered a business entity or non-business entity?
Senator Neal, thank you for the question. I don't know. That's something I would have to ask.
Because, so I think three of us were probably present for the commerce tax conversation in all of its glory. I think it was 6 hours of our lives. And we went through a lot of the pass-through, like what were the pass-through organizations that were being exempted, right? Who's in, who's out, why? And I think a lot of there was a lot of conversation around, clearly there were business interests who were interested in being excluded. And I think that would be super important to know, like, if the IRS is designating it as a business entity or a non-business entity, then it helps to determine what this change really means, because it draws in the IRS code, right? And so they give these series of examples, like on the IRS website, about like what's a REIT and like these different situations. It's almost like when you go and you have like your case law questions and you're like, if Y exists, then X should be your conclusion about such and such. And so I really just want to know the answer to that. And then I think that would be helpful for further conversation on this bill, because it seems like it's a gray area, but because of the revenue that it generates, I understand why you're seeking it out. That makes sense.
Thank you, Senator Chair, and thank you for the question. And it is something that now I need to go find out. When I approached this, it was an issue of equity, because if there are 7,900 landlords, in effect, through a real estate investment trust that are not paying a commerce tax on property in Nevada, whereas a non-REIT that is a corporate rental entity that has land and they are paying tax, then we have two entities that are unequal and we are actually losing tax money. So that's how I approached it. So your question about whether it's a business entity or not, I will literally go do that right now, but I do not know the answer because I think I went in a different way as to the way I looked at it.
So, and while you're looking that up, can you find out on the tax treatment side, right, when they file, what is their tax treatment under the IRS? Because I think that's going to delineate whether or not, how they're considered, right? I'm just curious about the tax treatment at the federal level, because they could have certain parts of the income could be exempted, and I don't know if that's in your PowerPoint, but I think I'm just curious about that. But we'll open up for anyone that's here in support, and then when you come back, if you know, then we can talk about it. We can talk about it offline. Senator Spearman.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's only two of us that were here. So the commerce tax included NAICS, North American Industry Code. And so I think where the starting point might be is what is the NAICS code for the REITs? Because that will determine the kind of business entity that they are and whether or not they're captured under the LLC. Does that make sense? That's all.
Thank you, Senator. When I looked up the NAICS, I looked under real estate and rental and leasing, and that was number 53. But I don't think there is a REIT in NAICS because the way that it was created to be more of a mutual fund issue and the monetization, I think it bypassed that, but that's information that I need to seek out and look at. I just also want to mention there are other states, when I started researching this, that are also looking at how REITs, and some of them are finding different ways. Georgia is looking into it. Hawaii is looking into it. I want to say both of those have income tax. We do not have a state income tax. This is not how I'm looking at it, but this is something that people are starting to look at across the country.
Okay, so we will open up for support. Is there anyone here for support for AB 345? So we will go to the phone lines. BPS, is there anyone online for support for Assembly Bill 345?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Okay, is there anyone here in opposition of AB 345? So we'll go to the phone line. Is there anyone here on the phone in opposition, BPS?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Okay, is there anyone here in neutral for AB 345? Carson City? Is there, BPS, anyone on the phone line in neutral?
There are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. No, we can, if you want a closing remark, if not, we can talk offline. Okay. So I will go ahead and close the hearing on AB 345. And now I will open up for public comment. Is there anyone here in Carson City for public comment? Seeing no one in Carson City, BPS, is there anyone on the phone line for public comment?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will adjourn Senate Committee on Revenue.